Listen in for some positivity and good times. The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And as you can tell, I'm by myself right now. I do like to come on every once in a while and just have a little, event, something that I have on my mind, on my heart that I need to share. And today, I want to say something that's going to sound pretty controversial, but when you think about it, it really isn't. And that is your feelings don't really matter. You say, why would you say something like that? Well, let me explain myself. When I say that your feelings don't matter, it's due to obligations. Let's put it that way. You know, there's a movie, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but the conversation was between Denzel Washington's character and his son. And he talked about how he didn't have to like his son. There was no law saying he had to like his son. But there is an obligation as a man and as a father that he had to take care of his son, to make sure that he raised him the best that he could, to make sure he had clothes on his back and food in his belly and a roof over his head. And I kind of liken it to a conversation I had with my own son. See, I wasn't always a good guy. I wasted my life on alcohol and drugs, kind of checked out of society and checked out of my own family. My son told me one day, "Dad, I love you, but I just don't like you." And those words really resonated with me, because although he felt an obligation to love me, he did not feel that same obligation to like me, because I wasn't living up to my obligations. Now, you can feel any way you want to, but there are certain obligations in this world that you have to uphold. Same as I was just saying is with your family. Do I always like my wife? Well, just like her, I'm sure she doesn't always like me. We have our arguments and disagreements, and may not actually like each other at the end of the day, but we made an obligation that we were going to stay together as man and wife. Now, granted, sometimes there are relationships that are just so toxic that I think that obligation kind of gets thrown out the window. That's not what the original intent was. You should do everything in your power to make a relationship work. Whether you both get counseling, change your way of thinking, change yourself in a way where you can be together. But reality is not everybody can do that. But that just goes back to that same sentiment, is you have to change yourself and stick with your obligations. Now, granted, I was married once before, and things didn't work out, and we got a divorce. But that was also something that set me on a new journey to change myself, to be a better person. And it took me 10 years before I was able to get in a relationship where I could say, I'm going to make this work no matter what. And I've had to change a lot of things about myself. And you should try to compromise. Yes, there's a lot of things you should learn to compromise on. But when it comes to morality, things that your beliefs are, I think you shouldn't compromise those things. Now, this may sound confusing, but I'm getting to a point. I don't always agree with other people on certain things. I have a certain morality that I hold near and dear to my heart, that I feel are the same values that God has asked me to fulfill. But even if I don't like you, and I don't agree with you, I have an obligation that I should take care of you and not bring harm to you. It's a societal obligation. And as a human being, you're supposed to love your neighbor. With that obligation, I can't bring harm to you. I shouldn't even wish harm upon you. And if you wish harm upon others, that seems like a problem that you have. I don't agree with everyone, and not everyone agrees with me. But I have an obligation to take care of you or not to bring harm to you. If I break that obligation, that's a strict enough problem that there's a law that says if I bring harm to others, then I need to pay the penalty. Like I said, this may seem like it's going all over the place, but I hope it all kind of gels together. I'm gonna bring up another example. I don't like my job, but I have an obligation to be there. And when I do my job, they don't have to like me, but they have an obligation to pay me for my job. That the feelings are thrown out the window. I may not feel like going to work, but if I want to get paid or I want to keep my job, then I want to take care of my family, all obligations, then I need to be there. And you could say, yeah, okay, well, I don't like my job, so I'm going to go find another one. Well, if you want to take care of yourself and take care of your family, you have an obligation to find that job. But you have to make a stance somewhere and say, I'm going to fulfill my obligations and I'm going to make this work. There's all kinds of examples I could come up with, but the point being, obligations don't care about your feelings. And that's why I don't think this is really a controversial thing. Now, we can have a debate on any of these topics. I'm sure there may be an exception to the rule, and that should be set aside for someone with an opposing view that we can sit down, we can have a talk, and we can find out what's the common ground here. And that's beyond. We don't need to get into that. But as a general rule, your obligations, that outweighs what your feelings are. I might feel like wanting to go up and punch somebody in the face, but does that mean I should do it? No. We have to have an obligation to each other to not bring harm to each other. In the law, if you come upon somebody that's in need of help and you don't bring, or you don't try to get them any kind of help, then you've broken an obligation that it's negligence. You can go to jail for that. You can get sued for that, regardless of what you feel about that person. So with that in mind, if you have an opposing feeling about this, or opposing view, should I say, bring it up to me. I'm open to debate. I'm open for a discussion. And I think that's the problem that we're having nowadays, is a lot of people are not willing to sit down and just have a talk. I think we should compromise where we need to compromise. I do think there comes a time when you have to make a stand on your morality. And some of those things shouldn't be compromised. But for the most part, we do have an obligation to at least sit down and have a talk. I try to avoid politics when it comes to my show, because I want everyone to get something out of it that brings some positivity to their life. And I try to bring a positive message. And unfortunately, in this climate that we have, it's difficult to keep politics out of things. Now, I don't want to cause a political divide here with one of my statements, but in fact, I'm going to keep it general. You may know who I'm talking about, but I don't want this to become a political thing. I want you to get my point, where there was a person in Congress that called for violence towards people a part of the other political party. But as a person in power, your feelings shouldn't matter in that instance. You have an obligation to your constituents and to the other people that you don't call for violence towards other folks. You know, your obligation is to protect people, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. It saddens me that we've gotten to a point that our politicians have forgotten that. I don't care what your feelings are. There are certain rights that you can't infringe on. I'm sorry. I don't care what your feelings are. You have an obligation in power to take care of those that are under you and to make sure that the rules apply to everyone. See, our Constitution, it has certain rights that were put in place that, regardless of your feelings, you have to protect it. That's why you are in that position. You made an obligation in that position that you were going to protect and uphold our rights in the Constitution. And I don't care what your feelings are. A doctor, you make an obligation that you are not going to bring harm to others, and you're going to do everything you can to take care of people. You were given that position so you could do that. And if you don't, then you should have that taken away from you. Now, being that, this is not an egotistical thing, that being that I have a certain form of a position, a power, I guess you'd call it that, I should keep my values and the things that I hold dear at all times. And there was a video, it was talking about a particular actor that he has, spoken out and given his feelings, and he had a very opposing view, and someone that he worked with who had opposite feelings that he did, or beliefs that he did, they got fired and he didn't, even though he kind of made the same comparisons that the other person did. And I said, well, he should get fired too. But you know what? That's not what my core beliefs are. And I apologize for that. I was wrong. You shouldn't be fired for having an opposing view. Those aren't the actions that should get you fired. Instead, I just won't support the things that they do in the future, and that's my right. I'm not calling for them to get fired, but I'm not going to support you. And in that case, I let my feelings get the better of me when I made that rash statement, and I was wrong for that. I have an obligation to make the right decisions and say the right things, and my feelings shouldn't have mattered at that time, but I let them, and I was wrong. So I hope all this made sense. I really want to bring more positivity into this world. There's some things that need to be said. And, as long as you're not calling for harm against others, you have a right to say whatever you want to say. And if I say something and you don't like what I have to say, you have the right to say that your opinions on why you don't agree with me. But our obligations are that we don't bring harm to each other. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave it there. I'm sure there's a lot more things I could say. If you have any suggestions, please put them in the comments. If you want to come on the show and you want to voice your opinion, I'd love to have you on. And I don't care if you agree with me or not. I think, we should allow each other to speak. If you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. I hope you come back. For those of you who are regular to the channel, thank you for your support. And anyone watching this, listening to this, please pass the word on to others if you like what you hear. And so until the next one, please take care. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network